creative humans! Today we're going to show you how to create watercolors using dried up crayola markers, or really any water-based marker you have lying around the house. So in a jar, if you want to create some of these at home, in a jar you can start setting aside all of like colors. So in this, it's not brand specific. I have Rose Art, I have Crayola, I have small, large. I have not tested this with permanent markers, nor have I tested this with dry erase markers. I just use water-based markers. So here I have light blue, dark blue, all in one. You can use regular temperature water, but I like to use an electric teapot or boiled water just to get things going. So I have this jar saved up here. Now you'll notice I have maybe 8 or so markers. So I'm gonna maybe fill this 4 ounces of water. If you only have one marker, you don't want to dilute your watercolors to the point where you're not going to have a very potent color. So I would recommend starting with a little bit and seeing how much ink it gives you. I'm going to pour water in. I believe, and this might just be my philosophy, own personal philosophy, but I believe that the hot water kind of draws those ink out faster, creating your little liquid watercolor. So filled it to about 4 ounces, and this is going to get stronger as the day goes on. If you're wanting to paint with these, I would recommend perhaps letting it sit overnight. You can see one little pipsqueak one. You can see it's already starting to pull out the water. The felt tip will start turning white. So after it's sitting overnight, you should be able to use this for a painting. This watercolor painting consists of watercolors that I created from markers within my classroom. I'm going to show you how to create something similar. If you don't have any dried up markers and you don't want to sacrifice your beautiful markers to create a watercolor, I'm also going to show you how to create watercolors using just a colored marker drawing and then adding a wet brush. It's also a little bit less messy. So it's extremely important if you're using these marker watercolors that you dry off your brush as you switch colors, because you don't want to dilute these any further. In the lower 48, it's kind of cool. Crayola will take back all of these markers and you can recycle them, so you get one use out of it by them being markers. The second use is watercolors, and then they take them back. We have not found anything in Alaska. Crayola refuses to let us ship them to them because I guess it's more expensive. It's not cost effective. But I'm working on seeing if any of our local places will accept them. But still pretty exciting that you can get a second use out of these. So you use them as traditional watercolors and that you're just painting on. You can water them down. You can fade to a different color. The more layers you do, the important thing with watercolors is that you are patient. Because after they dry, you can really build up additional layers. So I'm just going to sample. I'm not going to complete this whole thing. I'm just going to show you a little sampling of what these can do. Pretty neat. Okay, and then if I kept building this up, this probably took an hour, not of consistent painting, just letting it dry in between. I used a nice watercolor paper. Regular paper will do, but of course you'll have that buckle. So the second method I'm going to show you, perhaps you don't want to create watercolors with your good markers. So I have myself cartoonized. This is going to be my students' project, not this week, but the week after. We're going to cartoon ourselves. So here, I just wanted to let it dry long enough to show you how to create layers with this. Okay, so I have brown there. I wear lots of yellow and mustard. It's my favorite color, so And like I said, next week we are going to be shooting a video on how to cartoon yourself. It's not going to be fully inclusive, but that's the next thing I'm showing my students, is how to make themselves into a cartoon. I always wear my extra tufts, even if I'm wearing a fancy dress. So I had to include that. So one thing I would not recommend if you're using good markers, which I'm using right here, I would not recommend adding your good markers onto wet paper, because that could affect your marker. So this paper is nice and dry, and anything I added in the yellow dress was already dried watercolors. So this is a nice alternative for students or any aged human that wants to create watercolors and only has markers at home. So now I'm going to go back in, just going to do a little bit of shading with a wet brush. There's no paint on this brush, it's just water. And just add a little bit of dimension by spreading the dark color around. I'm not going to finish all of this now. I will have it done by next week, just so I can share it. Just spreading that around. And one of my favorite qualities of watercolor is that the watercolors separate as they dry, and you can't really predict what they're going to do. It's very frustrating. I used to hate watercolors because I couldn't predict what they were going to do, and then I learned to love it. I really like the unpredictability. So that's my start for my little Miss Mozy dancing on a paint palette.